Sort of saw the problem that we had in healthcare and how we actually can, by standardizing processes and implementing them, showing people the evidence and giving people technologies that they can use, we actually have opportunity to bend the healthcare cost curve. So I wanted to share with you how we went about architecting this thing over 3 years. What exactly did I do in 3 years? So my experiences. So this is a typical doctor's life. And this was a picture taken, a surgeon coming out of surgery room. He had on his belt, he said, oh, this is a good day. If one of my colleagues goes on a break, I get 3 of his too. So now he's got a 9 pagers, and they will buzz constantly. And trying to figure out which one of them buzzing at one time. And if I was coming downstairs, and we saw there's a physicians, family physicians conference going up upstairs. I was so tempted to invite one of them over. And I said, well, look, we're talking about your life story. So this is their life. So what happened is that in 2009, I got called in by one of our customers, and Larry the Tenero, he's the CIO, and they said, well, we need to help find this a solution to this paging nonsense. That's where it started. So paging nonsense was the problem because it doesn't work. Paging is very good when it was introduced 25 years ago, but since then things have changed. Like, I'm not saying anything bad about paging technology. It worked very well, but 25 years ago. So that was the starting point. So I have the starting point problem, and the only thing that I know is a TOGAF ADM. So now I got to figure out where do we go next with it. One of the best thing architect's friend is, you know, one of the things that you're going to do in ADM is called an architecture requirement. If you really wanted to understand what the problem is, go ask people. Now, you don't go ask people when you know nothing about the subject. I don't know anything about healthcare. It's 2009. So what you do is you do research. Start reading. So I went through, I said, you know, there are all kind of papers in British Medical Journal, New England Journal of Medicine, all kind of papers. And I went through and I downloaded gobs and gobs of paper. I had a stack full about this. Now, a lot of the stuff that kind of goes by you when they start taking about CCs of this and that, and they say, you know, you bypass that, you read through. Speed reading is a very good skill for an architect. So one thing that I learned is that value, out of all of the work, is the value of interprofessional communication. What can we do? Because they have studies, and they say we can have reduce the avoidable errors by this percentage points. And they were talking about avoidable errors, the things that I was looking into. Amount of time a nurse spends on looking for doctors' phone numbers. And it was appalling to me that it was actually happening. You know, when you go to an ER, you sit there and wait for 8 hours in the ER room. Behind the scene, you think something is happening. I guarantee you nothing is happening. Because the ER doctor, who's a generalist, he walks up to you and finds out what your symptoms are. Based on that, he's got an 80-page PDF document that he has to follow to understand what the policy is around it. So he's going to navigate that through, then he identifies and say, Dr. Ishikawa is going to do something. That's the service that he's going to have to admit to. So what he has to pages him. Next thing, the guy doesn't call him back. When he calls him back, he's talking to the other doctor, other patient. So now they play phone tag with each other. A lot of the time is that a doctor in ER can't admit a patient until he has a service to admit to. Because he doesn't know whether that's even the right service to admit to. So that consult time it could be anything from 2 hours to 6, 7, 8 hours. In the meantime, you're waiting and sitting, nothing is happening. And that's the one in the area we looked at, and so I'm thinking about we can actually reduce the ER consult time. I go through a diagnosis of somebody and find out this is what the issue is, and then I look at it. I don't have to go through 80-page PDF document. I can actually separate this thing out, identifies this as the service. and the system sends an information to that clinician, and he writes back to me. Instead of having to call me back, he replies back to me and saying, this is the issue, I understand that, admit him, and I'm here, I'll take care of it. Next thing you know, you admitted in 10 minutes. Most of the time you wait in ER rooms, not because there's not a bed, because of consult time. Now, bed is not available is an issue. But that doesn't prevent them from, because they put the people in the hallways if they need to. Hospital workers are probably the best people that you could ever work with. These people care. I have never seen any more dedicated people ever in my life. So that was my understanding. So by this time, you have a little bit of knowledge, you're a dangerous individual. You think that you can go and be a doctor now because I know what a prophylaxis does. So now I have to I'm educated a little bit, and I'm doing architecture requirements. I need to get a stakeholder. I just read these papers, and this is all I know what's in these papers, what this problem is. And I'm here to understand from your point of view what you think the problem is. So I gave him these papers. He skims them through, and he goes, so you read something. So you think you know now something. And at that very moment, just because I read those papers and I highlighted them, and they were yellow highlighted, pink highlighted, whatever marker that I can find, he actually believed that I read them, and I even read them. So I did something before any other IT ever have gone to work with him. Because everybody else gone to replace pagers. I didn't go to him to replace pagers. I went him to understand what the problem we were solving. So that was a moment of truth, and that happened with us in 30 seconds. From that point on, our relationship changed. And we came out of the meeting, and one of the guys who was a guy with me and says, Michael have never treated anybody like the way he treated you today. He said he listened to you. He didn't listen to me because then I was smarter than him, but he listened to me because I read those 30 papers. That's all there is to it. So what I'm trying to say is that before you're going to go interview somebody about the architecture requirements, do your homework. So I had 20 plus more meetings, hours and hours of analysis. I think I know what the problem is. At this point, I think what I know now is that it was a complex problem. It's a multiple discipline care team. They don't speak the same language. These are mobile workforce people. They have a culture that is there to take care of the patient, period. So we understood the problem is a lot more complex. Problem was not about technology, except technology has to be useful. So what we did two things. We actually now say we have to get more of these clinicians involved organization. So this is when the University Health Network in Toronto in Canada came into the picture. So we have these very prestigious doctors who have been doing this work for years, and they asked us to join the party. And this relationship was built. And they brought the expertise, we brought the expertise, we piled them up together. This was not a one side working. This was not an enterprise architect working. This was a project, as Alan alluded to. Every discipline that you can think about was a part of it. And then we agree that first thing we're going to do is to tackle this interprofessional communication problem. And that's what we did. And so just by one bullet, all we ended up creating an architecture vision. We agree what the problem to solve is. We know what the metrics of performance of the capability going to be. If that capability performs at that level, what is going to be the outcome metric? 3 bullets in architecture vision, those 3 things that I ticked off in ADM. So additionally, we learned as we went through in other principles. Data security. In healthcare, you cannot prevent somebody, you cannot hold back the data because they don't have permissions. You have to give them the whole thing. At the same time, you have to log them who has seen what. So if somebody is seeing data they're not supposed to see, they can be reprimanded, but you can't hold it back. Because the minute you hold back the data, that's the minute they throw the system away because they don't know what you're holding back. User experience, they will not use the system or anything that prevents them from taking care of patient. There is a fundamental concept in hospitals that we actually, through this analysis, we separated. There's electronic health records, which are legal documents. And they have a very different way of managing security, and they should be managed that way. And there's the communication documents. Communication documents are not electronic health records. So if you make the communication documents same as electronic health record, people will not communicate. But they will communicate outside of the system with the yellow stickies. Or leave somebody a voicemail, hopefully they will pick it up. Call me in my office, leave me a voicemail, and next thing on my desk, the phone is having a red flashing light. I don't have the desk. So how do I know where the red flashing light is? I have a message. So next 3 hours, I don't pick it up. Next thing you know, Mr. Johnson is in an emergency room again. Decision making, another fundamental issue in healthcare. In clinical matters, there is a clear hierarchy. In other matters, there is no hierarchy in healthcare. Clinical matter, doctor's in charge, everybody follows. In non-clinical matters, there is nobody. There's 18 people in the room, any of them can say no to anything, but there's not a single one of them who can say yes to anything. That's the reality. Behavior modification, people will do. That was the best thing that I learned about behavior modification. Show me the evidence. Just like the old movie. Show me the money. So we deployed our first system. So what we wanted to do next is that we deployed this whole thing in a cloud. Deployed this thing in the cloud because what it did do is that it took the communication system outside of their data center that was protected, because once you go to the first layer, everything is wide open because they have all these non-controlled applications running in the data centers. So we took that and put it into a cloud and put one interface from their back office systems into the cloud. And now you bring your own device to communicate with this cloud. Think about it. Doctors or nurses and other people are allowed to bring their own device and connect with it and do their job. I don't think that's an impossible thing to ask. Let people bring their own equipment to do the work. I think that's where we're heading. It's quite reasonable to ask somebody to bring your own device to work in. So as a result of this thing, we have all kind of new results coming out of this thing. And there's a lot of some papers that are sitting and there you can take a look. But as a result, another thing that happened is that since we started doing this thing, this study came out of this New England Medicine last week and say they basically blasted the entire strategy of the U.S. healthcare about implementing electronic health record systems. They said, look, people are spending millions and millions of dollars. I tell you, they're not going to solve the problem. The problem isn't with the electronic health record system. The problem is that we have an interprofessional communication problem. So there's other things happening in healthcare. Perfect storm, accountable care organization, Healthcare Act. These things are coming, whether it's one party or another, because cost isn't changing, regardless who's in the White House. Next generation systems. These are the things that we are tackling in our next generation. Bringing those disciplines. And the future of deployment looks something like this for us. We built the cloud, it works, it produces a result, and those results get published into these prestigious journals. Now we have, because we're dealing with the PHI data, patient health information, each country has their own standards. So we had to build a cloud in each country. Once you build the cloud, then you only have one interface from the back office system. You can control it. And plus, we have a non-clinical information. So my next biggest challenge is, which I don't know how I'm going to solve this thing, is that build a cloud in every country and put this application in it and allow this research to happen. So that's the job of an architect. So there is a way that we partner with the universities. You can be a strategic partner, you can be just a research partner, or you can just be a user. If you're a community hospital, you don't want to be a researcher, don't be a researcher, just use it. So it's possible for us to bend the healthcare cost curve. And we are little by little we're doing it. Because we're not making it go like this. We just want to control this puppy. That's my time. Thank you very much.